One of the problems with our society, particularly as it relates to things that happen to people from a health perspective and other economic and what have you, is that we always kind of assume that it ain't gonna happen to me. It's not gonna happen to anybody in my family. And as a result of that, oftentimes situations occur and things happen to us because we assume the position that it's not going to happen to me or to us or to anybody in our family. And statistics show that that's a terrible mistake because anything can happen to anybody at any time, and it's not always anticipated. The same is true for suicide. You know, that's a phenomenal problem in our community, and oftentimes family members and individuals assume that, well, you know, it's not going to happen to me. But it's kind of like a wreck. You know, you like to say that a wreck is not going to happen to me, but sometimes, whether you're in the right or wrong, that happens. Well, one of the ways to address those things and to change our attitude about that is to, first of all, realize that it can happen, and secondly, realize the importance of education and prevention. That's equally true for suicide. You know, that's something that we don't like to think about or talk about, but it happens. And we're going to talk about some statistics, if any of this illustrious panel would know the statistics, about how often this occurs in our community. So I'm more than a little happy today to be able to bring to you a show talking about suicide, suicide prevention, suicide education, and the collaboration on the part of certain agencies, you know, to deal with this problem. So I'm here in Warner Robins at the Phoenix Center, and we've got some individuals in this community, a collaborative group, to discuss not only a particular and a specific activity that's coming up on October the 20th as it relates to suicide, but also talk about how several members and several organizations in the community are very, very concerned about it and are trying to the best of their abilities to address it, to prevent it, and to educate the community. Additionally, to deal with the families who have been affected by suicide. This is a call to action.
A call to action.
This is a call to action.
A call to action.
And I'm your host, Alex Habersham, and I'm happy to be here today. And I'm really excited about this because anytime one can engage in any activity or a program that's going to have a positive benefit on the community and try to move the community forward, and of course that excites me very much. Now we have with me today all of these individuals who are part of this collaborative group and who are planning for this activity for the suicide walk, out of darkness.
Yes, sir.
Out of darkness. And this is going to be an activity that everybody can participate in. But first thing I'm going to do is pass it over to the director of this center, Mr. James.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much.
You can say your last name since I did.
Oh, I'm James Singleton. I'm sorry. I'm James Singleton. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Phoenix Center for Behavioral Health Services here in Warner Robins. Thank you for coming to town and helping us to address something, as you said, is stigmatic to the community and that we don't always want to talk about. Don't always want to admit it, don't always want to face it. But several years ago, I was approached by the State Department of Human Resources Commissioner that we needed to start addressing these issues because Habersham County, believe it or not, had one of the highest suicide rates in the state.
Wow.
And asked me if I would spearhead somehow a movement to be able to try and address this better in our county. Well, unfortunately, Mr. Habersham, that same year, the mayor of Warner Robins committed suicide.
Wow.
So I don't know if that brought the major attention to it statewide or the fact that it was such an awesome event to have occurred and it impacted our community tremendously that they felt like, you know what, we need to take a big stand and do something about it. And who other than a mental health center that is already in the area that works with individuals providing treatment, education, and support, why don't we approach them and see what they can do to perhaps expand this endeavor? So I drafted a letter to several agencies in the community asking their interest in being a part of a potential coalition that would address suicide, education, support, and be able to help reduce the stigma of it in this community. And the response was overwhelming. Everyone in every aspect of our community in terms of helping agencies came together to a meeting that I held, and there's been several subsequent meetings after that to put together what we call ourselves now the Suicide Prevention Coalition of Central Georgia.
Wow.
And that is comprised of 15 plus agencies represented as a part of this coalition. And that's what you see here today, individuals from some of those agencies. Of course, you know how schedules are, and because everyone can't be at every meeting at all times, we have a small representation of those individuals here today.
But a very, very capable one. I can tell by just listening. And you know, it really, really warms my heart to see activities like this where people get together and address. You know, I wish that we could send the country a signal.
Right.
You know, maybe we need more of this kind of activity in the whole country, because we can do better, we can be better, we can improve, and we can make progress if we were to work together. So I want to congratulate you. I want to congratulate all of these agencies for thinking it would not be robbery to try to get together and address a very, very important and sad issue in our community oftentimes, because I am reminded, you speak of the mayor, I think about Senator Robert Brown, you know, who, you know, was a dear friend of mine, and it hurts, you know, and I'm sure that families who have members who commit suicide hurt all the time, and I know there are some support agencies, but we don't need to do all the talking.
Yes, sir.
You know, Miss Smith right here is kind of chomping at the bits, and the other members. So what I'd like to do is to just kind of go around the table, and although, let me introduce them because they don't think I remember all of their names. This is Miss Kelly, Miss Anne Marie, Miss Brandon, Miss Jackie, Miss Heather, and Miss Nancy. They'll give their last names. I can get one. I can get a part of it right anyway. Thank you very much. So what I'd like for you to do is to just, you know, say who you are, what agency you represent, and what's your involvement in this activity.
Okay. My name is Kelly Smith, and I represent NAMI of Central Georgia. And I'm just here to collaborate with these other ladies and help set up and get everything set up for the walk.
Say a little bit about NAMI.
Okay. NAMI of Central Georgia has been around a long time. We help those who suffer from profound mental illness. We have groups for them. We have, you know, their house, they have a new house. They have, you know, we provide transportation to and from doctor's appointments, life skills. Life skills is a big thing we do there. It's a large organization, a lot of people are behind it, and we need support. We need support too, just like everybody else.
And you're very important, because I read a statistic once where it said that, you know, like 75% of the population needs some kind of mental health.
Right.
You know, now a lot of people deny it, but you know, I'm the first to admit that I'm one of them that, you know, that does need it. You know, it's called, we all have psychological, emotional, and other kinds of problems. Thank you for all you do. Miss Anne Marie, who do you represent?
I'm Anne Marie Cassifrey. I work at House and Medical Center. I'm a therapist with the Behavioral Health Department. I'm very excited to be a part of the coalition. I feel like increasing awareness of the occurrence of suicides and providing support for the surviving members of families is an extremely important thing to do, and I'm just very proud to be a part of this.
What area do you specialize in with the House and Health?
I wouldn't say that I really specialize.
Not you, but you know, how what area of involvement in suicide prevention, any of the peripheral happenings that a person could come to the center, to get some assistance?
Oh, at the hospital?
Yes.
Well, I'm one of the therapists. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I do evaluations in the ER if people come in a behavioral health crisis to determine what would be the best level of care to help them with their immediate situation. If they need to be admitted, arrange admissions. And I also work on the unit, which would involve doing intake assessments, doing maybe family sessions if that's necessary, indicated, working with them on increasing coping skills, anger management issues.
Just a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, pretty much.
But
yeah.
what's important about that, and as all of you talk, I want the listeners and the viewers, etc., to understand, and I always say this, I teach in the prison system, and I let the inmate that there are resources available.
Yes.
In any problem one finds, any family problem, in the psychological problem, in the social problem, in the economic problem, in the health problem, that too warms my heart. I guess I'm going to have to take my coat off in a minute since my heart is so warm. But to know, and I'm serious about the fact that there are many resources available, in the community for mental health, and it's important. I said 75%, and I said that I'm one of them. So we're going to move on to Miss Brandy Smith and let her talk very briefly, introduce what she does in her involvement. Because we want to leave some time to talk about the out of darkness community walk. But I think it's important, and you may emphasize, the necessity for it in of you as you talk. But we want to leave enough time to talk about that and say who can come, etc. And so go ahead, Brandy, briefly, please.
My name is Brandy Smith. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I'm currently doing volunteer work with the Southern Center for Choice Theory in Macon, Georgia. And my biggest issue with suicide, other than that it occurs, is that there's such a stigma still attached to it today. And we live in such a modern society, and I think that much more understanding needs to be given to families, to those who have been just succumbed by mental illness, to feel like they have no other choice than suicide.
Wow.
Yeah.
Miss Jackie James?
I am Jacqueline Cassie James, and I represent the Fort Valley State University. I serve as the Director of Counseling Services there at the university, and we work with the coalition as a collaborative.
Very good. Miss Heather Prunty?
Good. My name is Heather Prunty. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I also work at Habersham Healthcare, a licensed therapist, and do psych evaluations in our ER, as well as work on our behavioral health unit, providing family, group, and outpatient services, and giving resources to these people that come up. And it's not just mental health that we deal with, but also substance abuse issues as well.
And Miss Nancy Ridley?
I am the director of the Behavioral Health Program at Houston Medical Center. I've been part of the Suicide Prevention Coalition of Central Georgia. Honored to be part of the Out of Dark this Sunday. We also, the other licensed counselors from Houston Healthcare and myself also do a suicide, survivors of suicide support group. It's free to the community. It's on the third Thursday night of each month, I'm sorry. Third Thursday night of each month. And we have a phone number for that we'll get for you prior to the end of the show. Survivors of suicide refers to people who have lost a loved one to suicide. That's me. I have not lost an immediate family member, but I know several people who have touched my lives who have been lost to suicide, and I think probably that's the majority of adult people in our society. I don't know that statistically for a fact, but I do know many people. I know professional people who have committed suicide, and it breaks our hearts, and there's a terrible stigma attached to it, and it's not a secret. It's everywhere, and it needs to not be a secret. It needs to be okay for us to talk about. We have a beautiful butterfly release that's going to be part of our program, and one of our survivors, her butterfly stayed with her for about a week after she released it, and she had lost a member of her family to suicide. And so, if you've never seen a butterfly release, it's a beautiful thing to observe.
Wow.
Mr.
Go
Habersham,
ahead.
Nancy is talking about one of the components that we're going to address at the suicide walk on Sunday. And I don't know if you've ever ordered butterflies before, Mr. Habersham. You probably went outside and caught those that were flying around outside. But I learned something last year. We ordered butterflies. You order them frozen.
Wow.
You order them frozen, then they have to thaw at a certain temperature. And what we're doing is we're symbolizing someone that has passed away. A family member dedicates that butterfly to someone that they have lost and release that butterfly.
Wow.
That is an extremely powerful moment.
Absolutely.
And we want the community to know we are touched as each one of those survivors or individuals that have known someone, even if it wasn't a family member, it could have been a church member, a neighbor, someone you were in school with, your children knew, those kinds of things. So that's one of several other things that we're going to address at the walk itself. We're not just going to walk and go home, because the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention is basically who hosts the walk. The walk occurs all over the country, and these walks are usually at night. But in Houston County, this is our sixth year, I believe. We've had all our walks during the day, but most of them occur in the rest of the country at night. For whatever reason, they just thought Out of the Darkness is the title of it. Right. And they feel like if you come out of the darkness to hold a candle and make an effort to do something for someone that their light has gone out as a result of suicide, that it makes the walk even more powerful. So we do ours during the day, but we still have a lot of components that make it very special to family members and individuals that survived that death of that individual. So on Sunday, the 20th of October, the walk that is dedicated to help those individuals that have lost someone to suicide, we represent them as a part of prevention, as a part of education, and a part of support, and giving them that support. So we're going to eat pizza, we're going to walk, we're going to have a link ceremony, tying ourselves together. You buy these little key links that you connect the link to. We're going to even have a link ceremony where we link ourselves to each other and commit ourselves as well, not only representing the individual agencies that we have, but that link is going to wind up one chain.
That's phenomenally important, and I don't want the community to take it lightly, because this walk memorializes, if you please, individuals who have committed suicide. But notice that Mr. Singleton also said education and support. So and I know there are several, indicators of feeling helpless, feeling hopeless, acting impulsively, exhibiting a change. There are several indicators. So what I think all of these individuals and all of these groups would want to do is, although they may not have a statistic, but then they want to help to prevent, prevent suicide. So somebody talk a little bit about, anybody who might be familiar with some of the signs that a person is having problems and might be susceptible, a candidate for suicide. We just take too much for granted, and we overlook. And I don't want to do all the talking either. Go ahead.
They may very well tell you, especially if you ask a person, are you having thoughts of suicide? Very often people will be honest and will tell you. And I believe there's a myth that will put it in the person's mind. But if you think about yourself, if somebody asks me something, it doesn't control my actions, my thoughts, my behavior. Someone can ask me all kinds of things, but it's not going to make me go out and do something. Changes in appetite, if somebody has sudden weight loss, they're not sleeping at night, or they're sleeping all the time. Prior attempts, if someone has attempted suicide in the past, or if someone does some sudden things that make you a little uneasy for them. For example, if we all need to have probably wills and funeral arrangements and all those sorts of things made. If, however, though, someone has had a terrible trauma in their life and all of a sudden they give away all their prized possessions, they make their funeral arrangements, perhaps they're not even at an age where they might be thinking about these things anyway, that frightens me.
Okay, let
need
me
to
put a
talk.
pin in that, because I'm sure that somebody listening to this gonna say, maybe there's an indication that, what should that family member do? You know, if they see a friend, or associate, or church member, if in fact, you know, they see, and I know it's kind of tedious and kind of sensitive, you know, to say, you know, well, you know, Joe seems to show signs of maybe he or she, Joe or Jane, he or she is contemplating suicide. What's the tasteful way of addressing it and trying to find if you can get that person some help? Heather?
I typically encourage those people that are trustworthy or their support systems to encourage them to talk to someone. They're more than happy to call to the hospital and speak to one of the therapists that's there so we can talk with them. If it's in an immediate situation where crisis is needed, please get them to our hospital and our ER so that therapist can see them. If you can get them either to their primary care physician, get them to bring them to the hospital, or just to get them to talk. So you want them talking, you want them communicating. You want to be around them so that there's no probable chance that something will happen. So get them to care as soon as possible so that we can get them the care that they need.
Anybody else want to, that have had some experiences or a scenario that they would like to mention? Kelly?
I just piggyback off of her, you know, don't turn your shoulder on it, just get it in the open. I'm not gonna deal with it, like you said, it's that issue that's like that, so, but it needs to be brought to the light. So that way, whatever need is not being met psychologically, physically, whatever, we can assist them with that. I mean, that's what this coalition is designed to do.
Sometimes those early signs just simply means we want someone's awareness raised that there are red flags. And if you aren't the person that provide that service to them, we have a website. Our Suicide Prevention Coalition has a website that you can refer them to, and this is going to be posted so that our listeners will be able to get that information, but it's www.spccg.org.
www.spccg.org. Yeah, I remember that, Ms. Heather. Well, this is a call to action.
A call to action.
And I'm your host, Alex Habersham. We're here talking with this collaborative group who are dealing with suicide prevention and talking specifically about a walk to memorialize individuals who have committed suicide, and just as importantly, talk about some of the things that we can do to help to prevent it. And I know Miss Nancy wants to say something, and we're going to let her talk right after we come back. We'll be right back. back. Our time has just about run out, but we certainly want to give more information about the Out of Darkness Walk, and Ms. Ridley is going to give us some additional information.
Thank you, Mr. Habersham. The walk will be this Sunday. Everyone is invited. Donations are encouraged, although it is a free event. We will be at Fountain Park. Registration will begin at noon. Fountain Park is on Kimberly Drive here in Warner Robins. We will invite everyone to come out for the walk. And I also wanted to mention the the SOS, Survivors of Suicide Support Group's phone number. I promised that earlier. It's 478-227-7939. And also the web address for that is email is houstoncountysos@gmail.com. Please come out this Sunday and join us at Fountain Park on Kimberly Drive. We'll have up large signs.
Everybody should come out and walk. I just heard that you can even bring your dog and walk your dog while you're doing it. Let me congratulate all of you for your service. You know, you all are licensed professional counselors, etc. And you gotta love it in order to do it. You know, counseling is very important to our community. Collaboration is very important to our community. I appreciate the opportunity to come out and walk and help support this mission, because it affects everybody. And you can play a role. It's kind of like voting. Every vote counts and every pair of feet count. In this walk. This is a call to action. Call to action. I'm your host, Alex Habersham. Have a great day.
www.makingblackpages.com